All right, everybody, welcome back to Apex Mind. Adam here with you as always. And on this month's episode, I have Sharon Koifman, who is an expert in remote management. He's been working in remote working for over 20 years. He runs his own company in this space. So I'm really excited to bring him to the show so he could talk to you about his expertise. Welcome to the show, Sharon.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So let's just start off with what your background is and what got you to this point of running a business that helps people with remote work.
So I started off originally running a web hosting company and an outsourcing company where I had two offices in India, managing about 3,000 shared hosting clients and providing a bunch of mom and pop shops. And this entire business was run out of my home. The servers were in Texas and eventually moved to New Jersey. The offices were in India, and I was here, right, telling people what to do and managing the entire operation.
Mhm.
And very quickly, when I was doing projects, web design, for people, I realized that there was a major weakness with the outsourcing industry, because if you're a real estate and you want to design a website, outsourcing makes perfect sense for you. But sometimes I had software companies and web companies coming to me because it was more cheaper to do it. And back then, 20 years ago, they did not know how to go directly if there were small companies. So I was taking care of them, but I felt like they were losing their business soul. And that's when I opened, once I sold my first company, I opened this company that specialized in finding the best and the smartest people across the world and just be about career-driven, full-time focused people. And that's where we are right now with DistantJob, where we do what we do. The last thing in the past, since COVID, I realized that the world needs more knowledge and more information about remote work. So I decided to write a book. I was literally on the second week of when the COVID block was happening. I started writing the book. And since then, we opened a media company called Think Remote and a podcast and everything that we can do to help people manage and run amazing remote companies.
Awesome. Well, I think there's a few things that we'll probably want to touch on there throughout the show, but let's start off with this. It sounds like you started off 20 years ago, and that's back when remote work was much less common than it is today. So what are some things you've seen change over all those years?
So back then, remote work was really just outsourcing. That's what it was called then. Uh, and it was really, and it was, in my opinion, the original problem of the entire industry, because the idea of needing to hire a completely independent company with a completely different culture and processes and an unfocused manager is what made the outsourcing industry looking very bad. I think that in the past 10 years, and especially when COVID started, people really understand how to hire their own people. They understand how to pay people internationally. So you no longer need a third party to work with international remote people. Of course, I'm stating the obvious by saying that COVID just brought so much knowledge and so much exposure and so much know-how, understanding of what it means to work for remote people. What are the benefits? What are the disadvantages? So the world has changed. We're
Yeah.
completely talking a different language these days.
Yeah, it has. I haven't been in remote work for quite 20 years like you have, but I've been doing it for about 10, and I've seen that change during COVID. In fact, I was working for a company right when that happened that was very in person and had to pivot everything. And I'm glad I had that experience. So what would you say have been the top changes you've seen in the last, what is it, maybe 2.5 years since the pandemic started?
So first of all, before the pandemic, when I was selling my own services, for example, the selling process was about explaining people why they should hire remote. It's not even, I didn't even need to explain distant job and what we're doing great and our customer service and our unique approach. It really was about, hey, let's sit down for 20 minutes and for you to understand why you would even be interested in hiring remote people. I don't have those discussions anymore, which is awesome, right? That my sales process and literally were cut in half. People say, I need people. You got remote? Sure. You don't have remote? No problem. That was a huge change. But the other change is that many companies, to their surprise, found that their remote workers are so much more productive. That people thought that the office environment was place of work. This is about a century worth of brainwashing since the
Mhm.
industrial revolution, that they felt that going to work 9 to 5 is the way to produce better. And maybe when everybody had done physical work, it made sense. But more and more people doing intellectual work and focus work, the office is this pandemic of distraction. Sorry, maybe I should.
Wow.
Maybe
I
it's too
like that.
early for the term pandemic. But maybe I'm abusing it a little bit. But it was. But the office is this environment of distraction that prevents you from from doing actually good work, and that was a huge change. That people just give it a shot. Some people hated it, but some people say, "Oh my God, our business just doubled their billables." I find a lot of law firms have that experience. It's like, "Oh my God, my lawyers just doubled their billables. We have the best revenue ever had," and this is because of COVID and this change.
Yeah, yeah. I think that term was perfect. The pandemic of distraction. I think we've all experienced that, and
I
you
like
know,
inventing new words, new phrases. Maybe one of them will catch on. Who knows?
yeah, yeah. Well, I'm still in that one for sure. And I don't know if it's the coffee room or the person coming over to your desk to talk with you, but I think we've all experienced that where it's very hard to stay focused in the office. And you see here in my home office, I have this very optimized for myself. I have a speaker over there, so if I'm working on stuff, I have like focus music playing. I have the smart lights, so I can set the lighting how I want. And maybe not everyone has that, but at least you have the ability to do that. Whereas at work, maybe you can add a picture to your desk or something. Is that what you're seeing, is like the distraction of your coworkers getting in your way in the office?
So, so the science behind this is that um, every time that you're getting distracted in any way, your buddy talks about your favorite movie. I mean, nice people, not people that want to cause damage or anything of that sort, but your colleague. You have a lot of colleagues. They're sitting around, especially in this awful concept of cubicles, which is, by the way, the enemy of distractions. Cubicles, at least when people work in offices, it works so much better. But I found some accounting firms making a choice to bring everybody to open concept, which is a
Mhm.
disaster. But that was pre-COVID. But the science behind it shows that every time somebody distracts you, it takes you about 20 minutes to come back to focus. Right. So
Wow.
every time that somebody taps on your shoulder, anytime that you hear your neighbors flirting with each other, anytime that that your boss in the middle of your project asks you to go to the conference room, anytime that you need to go on a specific time to lunch because you don't want to miss fish and chips on Thursdays or your happy hour, you cut this in the middle, it takes you 20 minutes to come back. And because of that, people produce about 2 hours and 53 minutes of actual work in an 8-hour shift in a regular office environment because of distractions. Distractions is your absolute enemy.
Wow, that's a very interesting statistic. Both of those, right? The 20 minutes to get back from a distraction and the less than 3 hours of productive work because of all
Yes.
those distractions. I mean,
Yes.
how much time is wasted? And I think a lot of us have seen that since we've come home. We started working from home. We have been more productive because we could just sit down and we can get our work done.
Yeah, and you did mention also that the second advantage is that you get to create your own optimal working environment. Look, here I have this 72-inch oak live edge wood on a stand-up table with a foldable treadmill and a nice cute beer fridge on the side in a really awesome room. Look, honestly, I would have been embarrassed to have this in an office, right? I don't even know if my boss my boss would have let me do that, but consider that I'm a boss of 62 employees myself. I would look like the funny boss. You don't want to lose credibility in an office environment. And suddenly in your house, you're cool. You're okay. You can make it any way you want. And I actually find that walking and working at slow pace makes me also so much more focused and so much more productive. And that's a secondary powerful thing that comes with remote work in terms of production.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love my stand up desk. Never had one when I was in an actual office. I love going for walks. I don't have the under desk treadmill like you do, but I can go
You,
walk around my block. Whereas when I used to work in downtown, it would take a lot longer to go on that walk. And I'd rather walk to the park by my house versus walk in a busy downtown area in downtown Denver where I live.
Adam, you got to get the walking treadmill. It's a game changer. The stand-up table is nothing compared to the walking treadmill. And I mean, you can buy whatever you want. This one particular that they sold on Kickstarter folds in half. So I can just sit down, fold it, and then bring it up, unfold it within seconds. And there's a lot of science about walking. Walking kind of regulates the blood in your system.
Mhm.
So it keeps you a little bit occupied, especially for aggressively ADHD people like me, where the blood flows actually makes you a little distracted, so you don't look anywhere else, while in the meantime keeps you focused. It's a big thing. I highly recommend having a little walking treadmill under your stand-up table.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm familiar with the science of getting movement and how it gets blood flow to your brain, gets your brain working better. I have a little balance board that goes under the desk that practices
Yes,
some
that's
things,
good also.
but that walking treadmill, I'm gonna jump on that. Um,
Really, I after the show I can show you some samples that I really liked, and it's just really good.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll talk about that afterwards. But going back to the whole remote versus in office, and we saw a shift during COVID, but now that things seem to be, we kind of be, hopefully we're on the tail end of that. It sure seems like it at this point. But a lot of companies have started getting their employees back into the office, and it's been, some companies are doing that part time. Some companies want it to be full time. I don't know. What do you think about these big tech executives and these leaders of large companies trying to get their people back in and go back to the 2019 way of work?
So unlike many of my remote colleagues, I try not to turn this into a religion. I try not to say that everything that is not remote is absolutely wrong. Um, for the tech industry that really is digital tech, that people sit in front of the computer, I don't understand. I don't understand why is there a need, but I do know that some of those bosses, some of those managers don't know any better. And the key here is to get the most uh, optimal process, which is defined by the management. I mean, I preach it a lot that the company is only as good as their management. And if the management are so not comfortable with remote work, you might as well go to the office or you will fail at your remote work. There's also other realities. Like I talked to some serious law firms, which, by the way, have doubled in productivity and doubled in billables. Some accounting firms and law firms that have no excuse to come to the office beside the the one aspect that they're really having a big challenge of um, creating the next generation of superstars. So if you're a top law firm, for example, and all your superstar lawyers are sitting in home, billing twice, being productive and everything, there's no one to coach the next generation, and their brands will be destroyed. And I kind of sympathize with that. I get it. I get it. The managers and the owners of some of those firms need these people in for their own branding. For the lawyers and the accountants, I think you should fight tooth and nail. There's really no reason for you to come to the office just to appease your bosses. So you better be a partner and making money off the brand itself, right? To come back, because you are they're significantly more productive. Again, tech, I don't get it. I just know that some managers do not want to change or fix things that actually work. So Elon Musk asking people to come to the office, I think in one way is really silly, in another way maybe doesn't know how to do it any better, right? And it clearly works very well for him. So why fix something that works?
Yeah. Yeah. Some interesting thoughts there, because I was going to ask you about culture, and I still want to talk about
Yes.
maintaining culture in a remote environment. But you brought up something really interesting. First off, it's management capabilities, which have to be built for that remote environment.
Yes.
But second off, I've read some articles and seen some stuff about the younger workers just coming into the workforce, and how it's a struggle for them to build their network and their careers. And I think you mentioned that next generation of superstars, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
So let's take those things off the plate, though. Let's say it is a tech job, a coder, an accountant, an engineer, whatnot. Do you see any culture losses for those kind of roles when it's fully remote?
So specifically techs, which are consists of a majority introverts, not a lot, but look, it goes back to the concept that the company is only as good as their management. Um, I speak a lot about it in the book, and I believe that you can create an incredible culture in a remote environment. I think maybe I'm delusional, maybe they lied to me, but I think that my employees loving where they're working, and they keep on telling me that, and they keep on mentioning, but maybe I just talk to the ones that mentioning it, they're not talking to the ones they're not. But I think that I'm maintaining a pretty amazing company culture remote wise. That requires a certain set of skills that you need to develop. So the ability to connect with people on more on an intimate level, they're understanding the concept of connection, which we can dive into deeper into, and I focus a lot in the book. But if you do not have those set of skills, and you're not interested to learn those skills or get on board with how to build culture in a remote environment, there's a lot of damage that could happen. I mean, at the end of the day, there, there's tons of research pre-COVID. During COVID, it was a confusing time. People did not want to go remote. They did. So it was hard to analyze. But pre-COVID, the research showed very clearly that people that work remote are more productive. The real weakness, the real disadvantage of the remote work was the social emotional experience, the culture, everything that you discussed with that. And there's plenty of techniques and strategies to make it a success and keep those incredibly productive people functioning well at home. Again, it depends on the management.
Yeah, yeah, and I think connections interesting. I think that's great, and just in general, I think that's a good skill for managers to have. But you're right in saying that for remote, it's even more important. So, what can managers do if they're struggling to manage a dispersed team that may not even be in the same country as them? How do they connect with these people effectively remotely?
So I believe that any quality um, manager in an office environment can easily replicate the experience in a remote environment. Unfortunately, and I'm about to make myself few enemies, so many managers suck, right?
Yeah.
And they need to learn how to manage, not how to manage remote. And the office environment give them the opportunity to be able to inspect whoever comes on time to work, whoever types on their computer. Look, I'm checking that they're busy. and avoiding the real facts, which we mentioned before, that people only produce 2 hours and 53 minutes of in an 8-hour shift. And a major part of it is the distractions that come from the management, right? For all the quality managers out there, they go around the office, check on their people, see how they're working, motivate them, inspire them, correct their mistakes, doing what proper, and evaluating the actual work, not evaluating how long they're typing on the keyboard. Replicating that experience is easy with just simple technology. I unfortunately, throughout my 20 years of working and teaching people how to work remote, it feels like when I have met some brilliant managers, amazing managers, that the moment that they go, back then they called it outsourcing, today is more remote, but the moment that they dealt with an offshore person, like all their brain cells just die, right? Something they think that, oh my God, it's remote, so I have different expectations. I need to compromise. Back then, I used to deliver people that work literally at 20% of the cost of North American salaries, which is not the case anymore. But the boss client of mine would go, could I ask him to do this? I'm like, are you kidding me? Right? That question should not be in the vocabulary. You should have exactly the same expectations. So if you walk around, check one person at a time, evaluate them, test them, motivate them, check their work and all that. Go on Slack, pick a guy that seemed like he ended a project, because we don't want to distract people in the middle. Very bad habit that happens in the office. But whatever you do, just pick that person, talk to him, turn on Zoom, right? The amazing thing about Slack is you can just type in /Zoom and you pop up as if you're going to a conference room in a meeting. So it's almost like the real experience. And talk to the person, motivate him, inspire him, teach them, test them, evaluate their work. You have two screens usually to work with now, so you can compare the work and communicate with them. There is synchronization tools that you can actually work together. It's better. It's really, really better. You just need to do it. To do exactly what you did in the office, the good stuff, not the bad stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's no excuse.
Exactly. A couple things that really connected that you said there. First off, I think it is about that connecting with someone as a human being. I used to work with like BPO outsourced companies, and what I noticed is a lot of the people that I worked with at the parent company who is contracting with the outsource company is they kind of treated them as like the other, and they were just a means to an end to just check this box. They have to fulfill these business processes for
Yes.
us. And what I noticed, and I would go both traveling in person to India, the Philippines, different places, and I would work with them remotely. But when I found out about them as human beings and started asking them about their families and their lives and just connecting with them, what do they like doing on the weekends? I was able to get a lot better work out of them than the people who were kind of cracking the whip and trying to push metrics. Is that something you've seen as well?
Look, first of all, that comes with the entire situation of this old school outsourcing operation. I don't believe in that. I don't believe that outsourcing is a solution that is made for the core skills in the company. So if you're a real estate company and you need to make a web design, outsourcing makes sense. But if you're a software company outsourcing to another software company, I mean, you're literally losing your business soul, right? In my opinion, so that outsourcing mentality already, not only you have this people that are not fully integrate part of your process, and they have this unfocused manager that deals with them and sit on them. You're also losing that connection, right? You don't have as you said it really well, as you treat them as others. And first of all, in my opinion, you should have everybody fully integrated and feel like they're part of your company. That's why I'm all about actually full-time, career-driven, focused people working from their own home instead of some outsourced office where everybody's working on different things and there's a manager that goes, "You better perform," right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm wiggling my finger here, right? So once you have this individuals, it's already a step forward in managing them properly. And of course, because the biggest weakness with the remote work is the social aspect, and managers are expected to invest a lot more in the more intimate experience. In my office, I expect every one of my managers, and sometimes I even test them, to tell me the name of the kid or the name of the pet of their employees, right? Because that matters. And that
Yeah.
level of intimacy is how you actually find out if somebody's getting burnt out, if somebody's unmotivated. You have just regular discussions.
Yeah, I remember a startup I was working at a few years back. One of my favorite Slack channels in the entire company was like a picture of pets Slack channel, and everyone would just post their pictures of their dogs or cats or lizards or whatever
Oh,
their
fun.
pets were, and that really helped create culture.
Yes.
More, obviously we're getting our work done, and we have a lot of Slack channels dedicated to projects and teams and so on. But that pet channel was what helped to create that connection much differently than any of the more productive Slack channels did.
So yes, we have, let me see here. In my Slack channel, we have the LOL, the joke channel. We have the birthday anniversaries, the appreciation, or the food one. The food one and the joke ones are the best,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's a whole bunch of random memes that have happened. But we also, for a long time, have been implementing a tool called Donut, which kind of forces people to connect one-on-one for 15 minutes every week. Now, interesting enough, we're experimenting right now with new tools because we found, especially that my team is full of introverts, that the one-on-ones are becoming more and more boring and more challenging for communication, and it's getting old. So now we're experimenting with a software called Catch Up, right? That it's 4 people coming and hanging out together every 2 weeks, so it doesn't get as old as much. And we are continuously working on finding new tools to create that connection, to have people hang out with each other and and communicate with each other, and not only creates culture, it also creates a way to find out when somebody's not doing well.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny. I used Donut at that same company, and yeah, I think it was kind of cool for some one-on-one meetings if you didn't know the person. But you're right. You have to change things up. And
Hmm.
I know we've been talking about technology. It sounds like you're really big on Slack and Zoom, and I love both of those applications as well. Is there any other technology that has helped you to drive virtual either community or virtual effectiveness?
Yes, so I think I mentioned a few things. The other, um, so now Loom is becoming very up and coming. It's pretty cool when somebody doesn't want to start typing the update, but doesn't want to come on Zoom with you either. So Loom lets you just record the entire message on audio, and just so it lets you create that asynchronous experience by doing it vocally instead of by doing it on typing, without starting having one-on-one meetings. That could be very distracting. So Loom is pretty cool. An old school program that we use for a long time is Basecamp. um, Basecamp is just the right tool to get updates from people. It's a project management tool, but it's the right tool to get update from people without distracting them. I mean, the entire science of this asynchronous work that comes with remote, that has been started getting promoted with remote, and I don't fully subscribe to it 100%, but 80% subscribe to it, is the ability to reduce that distraction. This is why it all goes back down to distraction and productivity. Now, we all talk about software, but I personally think that hardware matters so much, because to get a really good remote experience, you need to come as close as possible to almost a physical experience. And in my opinion, there's nothing more exhausting and more frustrating than a horrible web call. There's whether the massive latency or some in the background.
Hmm.
um, I I refuse. Maybe I'm a little bit of a tyrant, but in my company, nobody works from a coffee shop, right? Maybe I'm not so cool, right? But I don't want to hear back on people, although there's new technologies to reduce that also. But a
Hmm.
quality headset and making sure that your internet is working, and investing potentially in a mesh network when you have a 150-year-old house like mine, right, is more important than anything. The ability for me to pop up on Zoom quickly, easily from Slack, and not be completely frustrated and exhausted to a level that I don't ever want to talk to you again unless I must, is key. So getting yourself a set of one of a Jabra or Platronic headset with a proper microphone or whatever, or getting yourself a Yeti microphone with a good. I prefer more this Jabra technology. The Jabra Evolves or the Platronics, they really do a great job, and make sure your internet works flawlessly. Pay that extra $20 of your internet package to get the one that will have as little latency and distraction as possible. And yes, better quality, faster internet actually reduces latency. It's I know that latency comes from distance and certain waves and everything, but when both sides have faster internet, it will reduce latency. So hardware is very important.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I mean, you said a lot of good things. I haven't used either. I haven't used Loom before, but I've used a similar one. There's an app called Cappuccino that's the same thing, that allows you to do like short audio updates, and maybe in place of like that stand-up meeting at the top of the day, you can do that. Basecamp I'm using on a project with a client now. I've also used like Asana and Monday. Those project management tools I think are really good for async
They
work.
are great. Yes,
Yeah.
Monday. I love Monday. Yes,
Yes.
and Trello, if you want, if you are in that what's
Like
that name of
like
that
the
management
product
stuff?
space.
Right. If you can pound sheets, so my copywriters for all the writers, all the teams that take care of Think Remote, my media company, they use Trello a lot to organize their thoughts very well.
Yeah, yeah, that's another good one. I mean, I've used like Miro for virtual whiteboarding, tons of them. But I think the hardware, man, you mentioned, I think you almost need like 100 megabits per second speed, and
Mhm.
that low latency. You could see I have my Yeti here for this, and anything I do with professional audio, I do that. But yeah, the quality Jabra headset that I use for most of my day meetings, I have a 4K camera. I have the ring light that I think is kind of stupid. I used to think these were for influencers, but you don't want to look like you're in a hostage video like some people do, where it's just so dark and the lighting in their office is not good either.
Darkness exhausts. Darkness exhausts your eyes. You need to sit on Zoom for 8 hours a day or whatever amount you need, right? Having well lit room counts. So don't undermine this,
Hmm.
right? I have two lights pumping now. I have natural light coming, but I have two lights coming on, so I don't look like some in the middle of the night, like some shadow in the middle of the darkness. It matters. It really does matter for long-term remote work when you use a lot of webcamming.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I want to shift back to skills. I know you mentioned communication and connection is a very useful skill for leaders that need to lead remotely. Are there any other skills that you think, either for the leaders or for the employees, that you've seen as these skills need to be in place for someone to be a successful remote worker?
So one of the most difficult skills, one that I had to build, and some of my team members, is actually the hard skills of actually being able to evaluate the quantity of reasonable work in your day. This is the toughest. And having somebody who has deep knowledge in that specific hard skill, whatever you do, top lawyers in law firms, top programmers in tech companies, whatever it is, this is, in my opinion, such a crucial skill that is undermining management. And if there is a charismatic manager that it knows how to motivate, knows how to evaluate the work, but does not have the skill, he really needs help, because this is so important. If you have the ability to evaluate the quality and the quantity of work and know to actually estimate what is the expectation of that work, you're one step ahead. So I really encourage programmers to learn management skills in tech companies, and similar to everything else, I don't recommend outsiders coming in and managing. It would be better to get a consultant to teach your hard skill individuals how to be better managers. And of
Yeah.
course, if I didn't make it clear before because I used out of the language, empathy is the way you get things motivated and connected. You got to be an empathetic manager that really feels your people. Those are the two major skills that are crucial in a superstar manager.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I've seen that sometimes called like a funnel manager, or someone who's helping that work come in, get assigned and quantified. Depending on the kind of work you're doing, it can be really hard to determine how long it's going to take.
Hmm.
And a lot of high performers, or just a lot of us in general, tend to take on too much because we don't want to look bad. And we saw it early in the pandemic, because we know people were more efficient remotely. They were working too much. Some people were working 50 and 60 hours a week because they were just taking on too much and taking advantage of that extra productivity. So certainly it makes sense to measure and understand how much work a person can take on, so that you can prioritize and get the most important things done more quickly.
Yes, I I hear you completely. That this is it's the key. Yes.
Awesome. Well, I want to shift to specifically what your business does, but I also want to get your perspective before we do that. A lot of people in this audience work in employee development, training, enablement, whatever you want to call it. And so I imagine that you have some unique experience, because you work with people remotely, and you've developed. You said you have like 60 some odd employees. So what do you do to onboard your people remotely?
I start off with by saying that everything that you learned till now, forget about it.
Yeah.
I think that there's so much horrible habits that are happening in the offshore outsourcing, remote, whatever you call it, world, that I just need to remove. I need to remove in my company. It's a big priority to remove the freelancer mentality, the dream of working from the beach or working from the coffee shop, the outsource mentality where I just disappear to my work and I let you know in 2 weeks what have I accomplished. I need to clarify the communication is so crucial. I also need to explain the entire theory about managing distractions in a way. I don't I don't want to bug you every time about what is it that you do. So I prefer that you tell me and explain it properly once a day. You want to do it verbally, you want to do it through writing, you want to do it through the project software. And I find that a lot of my onboarding involves literally deprogramming people from all their horrible habits and all the misconception that they have um, from previous employment, where the boss said, I only want to hear from you when I talk to you, or something of the sort. And I tell them, if I don't hear from you, you're in trouble, right? You better communicate. I'm not going to, if I need to follow up with you, you're already one step behind. So a lot of that onboarding involves that, teaching them about all the software, teaching them that the Slack and the the Slack and the Zoom, and that entire mentality that I don't want them to feel distance. I also try to build trust within my employees. And the trust that I'm talking about is not the usual trust that uh, whether I think you're honest or I think you're competent. And don't get me wrong, those are important type of trust. But the trust that I'm actually trying to create is the trust that you can come to me and tell me anything and you're not going to be in trouble. And part of my onboarding is literally brainwashing them to say, look, you're going to do much better in this company if you're going to communicate with me when things don't work and do work, because we're a mistake friendly environment. We're an asshole free environment. Please come to me or the management anytime. And I just had a meeting, big town hall meeting with the company. And I said, if any of your management make you feel like that you can't communicate about everything, come to me. We'll talk about it anonymously and we'll figure it out. Right. But I need that communication. And I bust a lot of chops for the lack of communication. And that happens in the first few days, in the first few weeks, because I want to get them started on good habits, right? Which so many, I sorry for other companies. I don't want to bash other companies, but so many other companies, or the manager is a micromanager, or the manager doesn't pay attention. It just don't fit me.
Yeah.
And that is where my effort, it's a lot of communication and a lot of trust building.
Yeah, that's good. And there are some things I took from that that maybe you don't even realize that you're doing. But I think a lot of people as they're onboarding, they focus so much on the tasks of the job and they get them in. And I know you mentioned like the systems and so on, and that's usually a part of it. But I liked how you focus on what I like to call unlearning, right? Unlearn all the bad habits you have, because a lot of people
Yes.
carry that from job to job. And then I also like how you teach things that oftentimes people have to figure out for themselves, like how to manage distractions, how to manage their time, what the appropriate culture is for communication. Those things I think are implied in a lot of jobs, but they're not necessarily spelled out for a lot of people, but they're a very important part of your work on top of
Yes.
just your normal duties.
I care more about teaching my employees how to be better remote employees than how to be employees in distant job, right? I'm trying to create as much independence in my company as possible and reduce distraction as possible. Those are the big things, right? Creating motivated, trust building, and reduce the distraction. And if I get these people to be to be formed into the type of employees that I like, I don't need to tell them much, right? That they come to me. They come to me. I give them a vision, I give them a goal, and they come to me with any question, but they figure things themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the tactics and the specific task accomplishment, those things can be picked up over time. But when you're setting up the culture and the mindset and the basic behaviors up front, you're ensuring that they're not teaching themselves the wrong way, which is harder to break later on down the road.
Yes. The first week is the most important week. You can't putz around. I've made a mistake many times in the past of just let the person do the first week whatever they want and then correct them. No, they just, like, everybody comes with bad habits
Mhm.
and they're not being corrected from job to job. And I find that and again, because so many managers are horrible, right? And they're causing a lot of damage. And when employees come to me, I need them to properly communicate and not to be shy and not to be afraid of me. It annoys the crap out of me when somebody's afraid of me. But and the first my VP of operation always jokes around. It's like in the first week, every time an employee is afraid of me. Why are you afraid of me? Talk to me, right? The more you talk to me, the happier I am, right? This is, and I tell them, you want to kick ass in this job, I need to hear from you, right?
Yeah.
You can't be afraid of me.
Yeah. Well, So let's say after that onboarding period, you've gone a couple of weeks, couple of months, and they're kind of in their role. What do you do to give people ongoing development, coaching, upskill them down the road? What do you do to do that remotely?
So I am the type of guy who goes, talk to my people as much as possible, check on their work, evaluate their effort, motivate them, inspire them, let them know when they're not doing something right on a continuous basis. It's the entire agile mentality. There is no one bang every once in a while. You just keep on rolling and keep on correcting and keep on improving and doing it in a right way. The people come out of it feeling empowered and not broken, right? It's a lot of empathy that involves in this job. There is no secret sauce. The secret sauce is caring and putting the effort, right? The sharing your skills, you know, and do it in a diplomatic, caring way. So every job is different, and I find that a lot of managers and a lot of bosses, when it comes to remote people, I have this out of sight, out of mind mentality that they just stop managing their remote people. And if you share all the experience and all your knowledge with people on a continuous basis, and you do it in a way that doesn't scare them and doesn't intimidate them, you're going to win. You're going to have incredibly independent, awesome talent.
Absolutely. Now I'm assuming, because I know we'll shift to distant jobs in just a second, but I know you help match people up for jobs that are all over the world. So are your employees also based, all over as well, or are they mostly centered in like North America?
So nobody is in Canada where I'm at. Nobody. Everybody's distributed. We're a fully distributed company. My VP of operations, she is in Argentina. My VP of biz dev and marketing is in Portugal. My VP of recruitment is I had to move him from Ukraine to Italy. um, some of the directors, one is Romanian, one is two of them are from Ecuador. Surprisingly, I try to distribute as much as possible, but they're buddies and it kind of worked very well dynamically. But all of my employees are in different countries. By now, it's impossible to keep to hit just your unique countries all the time, but we try very, very hard.
Yeah. So, I assumed that. I just wanted to make sure I was on the right
Yes,
assumption.
we're fully distributed. We practice what we preach for sure.
So, what have you found is successful for crossing cultural barriers, and whether that be creating your company culture or whether that be the coaching and development? Because I found that sometimes people in different cultures need to be treated very differently, versus like working with Americans or Canadians or whatnot. So, how have you found success there?
Look, so there's a tough situation, right? Um, that I'm not comfortable so much discussing, but there's certain countries where the culture is so incredibly distinct that you really need to think in another way. And unfortunately, I don't hire as many people from those regions anymore, right? A lot to do with Asia, right? Not because, but it's just tough. Where it comes to Latin Americans and where it comes to Eastern Europeans, they're very different. But at the end of the day, you you treat them you treat them all the same way with respect. Look, it's interesting. I'm Israeli originally, and if you ever met Israelis, they're stereotypical, and it's not nice to stereotype, but the stereotypical, they are very loud, outspoken individuals, which stereotype by being they care on the inside. So they're described as what's called a cactus fruit, and because it's spiky on the outside and soft on the inside. And I remember coming visiting my friends when I was 15 years old, and we went shoe shopping. And some of my buddies were, because that's the way they speak. I've been Canadianized, so we're a lot more, a little less direct, and they would go, "Madam, get me that shoe. Madam, get me that shoe." And it's not rude there. They're not being rude. This is the way they speak. It's more direct, right? But so that is the culture difference. Beside, this lady was an older lady was running around bringing shoes to everybody, and then I said, in Hebrew, "Excuse me, lady, excuse me, madam, would you be able to bring me this shoe?" Right? The words exist. They're not being used a lot, but the words do exist. She dropped everything and went to help me with my shoes.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean to me? That was my conclusion, is in a culture that is more direct and more this and more and more known, and everybody's comfortable with a little less thank yous and a little less pleases, right? You suddenly the lady resonated with the one person who was more polite. So what I found is being more empathetic and more polite actually works better in countries that it's not so accepted. Some of my Eastern European employees are shocked at their behavior, but the level of loyalty that I get for being kind and empathetic to them, they don't look left and right anymore. They just want to work for me,
Mm-hmm.
right? Latin Americans, I tend to be stereotypically more empathetic people and a little more suave and happy and all that. But I find being empathetic to people and not accepting mean behaviors, but not being a stickler, not being over, as the word today they used to want to use, over woke or over hypersensitive, works for everyone, right? In at least in the Western Hemisphere.
Yeah,
I'm probably
absolutely.
sorry.
Well, and I've worked with dozens of countries in every continent on Earth besides Antarctica, and I'll do the same thing you did and maybe be a little vague because I don't want to be insulting towards any cultures. But there are some cultures that are probably more fit to certain types of work than others. Some cultures are very people oriented and really good at maybe like customer service type work, and
Yes.
but then other cultures might be better at more technical type work. But I like how you looped it around and talked about how generally being a good person, showing that you care, empathizing, those things generally work, even in cultures where that's not a regular part of their interaction. They might be a little bit more blunt and forward than we are mostly in the West.
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome.
It works.
Well, let's shift over specifically to distant jobs. So if we have anyone who's listening who either runs a business and may be looking for remote workers, or maybe someone who might be looking for work that is remote work, but what does your company do and offer to both job seekers and companies looking for talent?
So DistantJob is the first remote recruitment agency in the world. We've been doing this for 15 years, not when COVID started. We specialize in headhunting and soliciting people from established companies and top techs, top senior techs in established companies all over the world, and entice them with a real remote job. What I mean, real remote job, it's not a hybrid, it's not so much traveling, but it also means that it's a full-time focused, career-driven job, which is how we get exceptional talent. This entire mentality gives us the ability to find better people and to find them faster. And also, because we function a lot with countries where the cost of living is lower, you also tend to get a much better cost. But on top of it, we also do another very unique thing, is that we have this exceptional HR component to our service, because all the years that I've gained learning how to managing people, we, unlike a standard HR service that takes care of the legal and the payroll and does documentation and all of that, we actually get to know your employees a little bit on an intimate level. We sell ourselves as just a service that you hire us to do. So we're not the employer, and we get to know when the person potentially gets burned out, potentially gets demotivated, maybe they need their next bonus. So you have this extra HR component on top of finding amazing people. So suddenly we provide not just better people faster at a great value, but we also provide great retention, which is a major pain in our tech world these days. Of course, we focus on tech people, and that's kind of the story.
That's awesome. I really like how you're focused on helping these people to find full-time work. A lot of the times I've worked with people in many parts of the world, it's been through outsourcing, and generally they're not getting that full pay, right? Because the middleman companies taking some of that, and usually like the pay and the benefits and the employee experience isn't great. So I would imagine for the people who are applying for jobs like this is much, much better than them going and working for I'm not going to name names, but any one of these number of outsourcing companies. So what do you do to help these employees or the job applicants, so to speak, to stand out, since this is probably a really good opportunity for them?
So to stand out, the truth is that we don't help them stand out because we
Okay.
fight for our clients. We find people that stand out, right? You
I
don't
like that.
hire a recruitment agency because you want just any person off the street, or you most certainly do not want the recruitment agency to manipulate the candidate to be sold. I know that some recruitment agencies, they find one person and they try to push it and try to sell him and everything. That's not our mentality. We literally, here's a person that we find is exceptional. You don't like it, we keep on searching. The world is big. We have this advantage. We're specialists in recruiting across the world.
Hmm.
We don't need to push, and we don't need to train or manipulate a person into a position. We want the client to like them because we want this person to last forever.
Yeah, I like that. You're right that a lot of recruiting agencies seem to be focused on getting that person hired because that's the metric of their success.
Yes.
So
Our
what do you
metric is retention because we have an HR component to our service. So retention matters.
Okay. Besides the retention, I think that's great. Is there anything else that you do to make the clients satisfied and want to come back, other than just getting them good people and making sure those people stay?
Well, so part of this entire HR service is that exceptional customer service that we offer. I don't think there's any recruitment agency that has this level of customer service because there is a monthly service component to our solution. We actually go beyond, is like, here, have a person pay my bills in 30 days and goodbye, right?
Mhm.
We really actually want this person to succeed with you, and we sit with the client. And sometimes you look, if not for the service, I usually charge $400 an hour for consulting. I just spoke to the Canadian Revenue Agency how to manage remote work. So I do those services, but here I give it to you for free, or my team give it for free, so you can keep this person forever. We really want people to get excited about hiring remote people and not just hire them because, oh, they have to, oh, COVID. Ugh. That we truly do go above and beyond in getting people to love that experience with that remote employee on both sides. So we're just sitting there and just all day long, just not in the beginning. In the beginning, we want this person to be raw, come to the interview and do it right. But after that, once they're hired, we do everything to make sure that that connection is awesome.
That's amazing. I like the follow up afterwards, because sometimes that recruiting process is about getting them through the door, and then they move on to the next person and the next company they're trying to recruit for.
That's it.
Well, Sharon, our time is running short, but I want to give a chance. Is there, where can people connect with you, find you, learn more about what you do?
Okay, well, first of all, hit me up at Distant Job, right? Not Distant Jobs, not Distance Job, Distant Job, DISTANTJOB.com. Read my book. My audiobook just came out. It's me talking. I'm having, I don't think anybody has read a book, a business management book with so many jokes and so many silliness. I hope that people are as entertained as much as they learn. So the book is called Surviving Remote Work. It's a bestseller on Amazon. Hit it up, read it, really enjoy it. And then come learn more after that in Think Remote, our media company. And if you need me to consult from you, it's easy as email me, Sharon at distantjob.com, spelled like Sharon, but call me Sharon, it'll be much easier. And yeah, and I'm here to help. I love this remote work. I think that I carry a very balanced ideas about what an optimal remote work should be. And I'm one of the only people in this remote environment who will say, hey, maybe it's not a fit for you. And so hit me up and I would be so happy to help.
Awesome. Well, I'll make sure that when we publish the episode, all the links to your things will be in the show notes as well. But I do have one final question that I ask every guest before we end the show. I like to learn from the people, and I've learned a lot from you today. But I just want to know, what's one thing, either personal or professional, that you've learned lately that you've found interesting or it's been a benefit to you?
So one of the business advice that I have learned just recently in the past year is to invest in your introverts. The office environment neglects them all the time. The people that get promoted and do good and move forward in the company are usually the extroverts, are the people you hear and spoken. And many introverts, some of them have mental health issues, some of them don't, sometimes get cornered, and the noise and the environment prevents them from producing well. But the science shows that introverts are more productive, are more organized, are better listeners, and they're by far the people that can become your superstars. The remote work and the remote environment could be your solution, your opportunity to hang out and inspire and bring this productivity juice out of those introverts. And you might have a completely different company by doing so.
That's awesome. As someone who is a former introvert that is glad that people invested in me when I was younger and helped me to come out of that shell, I
Yeah.
love that advice. And I do see too many introverts that kind of close themselves off at work because they don't feel comfortable with being extroverted. That's great.
Yes.
Well, Sharon, it was an absolute pleasure to get to talk to you. Maybe we can do this again one day. But everybody at home, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.